Hey guys, how you all doing? BionicleSaurus here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at four figures, actually. We're going to be reviewing today this little set of dinosaurs and a pterosaur by a company of the name Wild Republic. Now, these don't actually say the company name on them. I had to discover that a few years after I got them through some internet research, but anyhow, these are some figures I picked up when I was just a young child, just a wee lad, over at the Pacific Science Center in Seattle, Washington. I've had them for years now, and they are pretty near and dear to my heart, so I am quite excited to talk about these. I'm not sure if I'll really have all that much positive to say, but let's get started anyhow, shall we? Let's start off with the Stegosaurus. So let's start talking about this with, I guess, some pros, some positives. The overall paint scheme is nice. It's pretty simple, a little bit stereotypic. A lot of Stegosaur figures go for this green on bottom, red on top look, but it's classic, it works, it's fine, nothing really to complain about. The detail is pretty lackluster. The overall sculpting and quality is mediocre at best. It's not terrible, but it's nothing remarkable, that is for sure. Now, getting into some bigger flaws, and more importantly, flaws that are more specific to this figure is an infant. No, seriously, it's proportioned just like a baby Stegosaurus theoretically would be. Okay, probably not just like an actual baby Stegosaurus, but it has incredibly cartoonish and infantile proportions. You got these big feet, you got a big head, the plates and spikes, the more, you know, the armament, the little ornamentations are all a little bit smaller and kind of less developed looking. This thing looks like a baby. That really is the major flaw with this thing, accuracy-wise. Just the anatomy is all just distorted. The proportions are way off. There are some other little issues, like there's a bit too much definition on the mouth line. It had cheeks. This thing had cheeks. It was a herbivore that chewed its food, so you probably should not see like this real defined line where the lower and upper jaw meet. And also the spikes that comprise the thagomizer are sticking pretty straight out when they should probably be sort of projecting back a bit more. So my overall rating for the Stegosaurus is going to be a 4. It's going to be a 4. 4 out of 10. It's not great, but you know what? It's not a terrible start. Next up, we have the Baryonyx. Now, Baryonyx is a genus that I absolutely love. It's one of my favorite dinosaurs, and this, well, you know, at first, this looks like a fairly decent representation, until you realize that it is a fairly blatant plagiarization of the classic and iconic Invicta Baryonyx figure. Seriously, this thing is not even trying to disguise it. I mean, it has some unique aspects. The colors, I suppose, are one defining feature, but overall, you can tell where the inspiration for this thing originated. It's pretty obvious, and it's unfortunate, because otherwise this would be one of the nicer figures out of this little group, but because of the obvious borrowing, quote-unquote, of designs, it's losing some points already for me. Now, speaking about this figure specifically, ignoring the plagiarism, looking at other aspects of it, well, the texture is non-existent. There's no texture, no detail. It's smooth as can be. I mean, it has some slight wrinkling that you can kind of see there, but yeah, the sculptor definitely ran out of steam when it came time to detail this one, unfortunately. Talking about proportions, the tail is way too small. People have pointed that out before on this figure. The tail is really just spindly looking. Now, despite being almost a quadruped with its pose, this thing still has a tendency to fall over because of the way they did the legs. This one leg is positioned way extended and outstretched, and so it wants to fall back all the time. It's really poorly designed in that particular aspect. The skull is okay. It is too wide from the top. Like, it has binocular vision. The skull should just be more narrow, the eyes should be on the side, and the teeth are just little pegs, and there's not nearly enough of them. There's also some pretty blatant, like, holes and dented bits and seam lines. Like, the quality control was a little off for the Baryonyx as well. So my overall rating for this one is a 2 out of 10. It would honestly be probably a 4, just like the Steg, if it weren't for the obvious copying of the Invicta figure. That is really an unfortunate drawback. Now, despite all of the Baryonyx's objective flaws, subjectively, I think this is the least good-looking one of the group. Like, especially if you ignore the plagiarism issue on the last one, this one is the worst. This T-Rex is so doinky looking. He's got huge arms, a huge head, a wimpy little tail. I mean, the proportions are just ridiculous. Just look at the silhouette and look at the proportions of it. It's hilariously wrong. Especially those arms are enormous. The head is so huge. It doesn't even look like he could hold up his head. Now, I do have one really big compliment to give this thing. It's a well-balanced biped. Like, nice going, Wild Republic. That is such a surprising thing that you did well on. Although this leg is weird. It has a bunch of flab coming off this ankle area. The left leg looks fine, but okay. The hands are pronated, which is unfortunate. The head sculpt, let me zoom in on this head sculpt, man. It is interesting. Okay, so as you can see, I mean, this thing is too bulky. This is he has a chubby little face. The teeth, again, are just pegs, and mine has some blood stains and some broken teeth, because that's what I do to figures, or at least what I used to do to figures. But anyhow, yeah, I mean, the teeth, I mean, there's at least a more accurate number of them on this one, but there's no shape to them at all. There's no size variation. Also, I forgot to mention this on the Baryonyx and the Steg, but no ear holes. None of these have ear holes. There's a bit of shrink wrapping going on the head, although it's not terrible. The eyes, at least, are somewhat expressive. From the top, you can see just how wide this head is, and yet there's no binocular vision. Instead of the iconic T-Rex dorsal skull shape of a wide back area of the skull and then a thinner snout so that he can have proper binocular vision, this thing just has like a broad triangle as the shape for the head from the top view, and it results in him not being able to see forward. The Baryonyx, actually, no joke, has better binocular vision than the T-Rex. As for detail and quality, it's really nothing new from the other two. So my overall rating for this one is going to be... You know what? It'll be a 3.5, maybe a 4, maybe just a 3, somewhere around that range. I guess a 3. I want to give it higher because of the bipedal pose, but really, there's not much redeeming this figure, unfortunately. Alright, so I assure you all that I have saved the best figure for last, and that is the Pteranodon. The Wild Republic Pteranodon, in my opinion, is kind of an underrated little dude. He has some annoying quirks, like the fish that is perpetually in his mouth. His head is far too small, and he's also missing those little bones that stick out of pterosaur arms and like point kind of inwards. Like, he sort of looks like they would be there based off of the way this webbing is sort of sculpted, but there really is no little bone sticking out there. The legs appear slightly long, the feet are kind of big and goofy. But overall, I mean, he's got pycnofibers, which is nice. The wings are pointed. They should probably be more rounded off, but it's not terrible. It's not terrible for a Pteranodon, you know? I mean, it's better than your average Pteranodon toy, and I like the counter shading, the almost marine animal style counter shading of dark on top and light on the bottom. It doesn't make as much sense for an aerial animal, but well, it still kind of does. Maybe if he's over land or dark water, then this sort of camouflages him, I guess. And then, you know, if something's under him, then, well, they'd see the black body, but at least the wings would be hidden. It's a nice thought. The paint isn't really as well applied on this one. The paint job is a little sloppy on the head specifically, like around the eye with those blue eye spots and the red crest. But overall, this is my favorite. I'm going to give this one maybe a 5. It's definitely not a 6, but I don't think it's a 4 either. Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, this is definitely my favorite, though. It's definitely the nicest of the group. Okay, so their collective rating, I guess, would have to be somewhere around, what, like a 3 or so? Yeah, these are not the greatest of figures, but you know what? I would still say they're a little underrated. I think they have some more value. You have a fairly nice pterosaur. If you ignore the plagiarism, the Baryonyx is honestly kind of an okay-looking figure, and the T-Rex is a well-balanced biped, which is always a plus, and the Stegosaurus is an adorable baby! Okay, but in all seriousness, these are not very good figures, but like I said, I think they're better than most people would give them credit for. It could just be nostalgia talking, but for what it's worth, that's pretty much what I have to say on these little Wild Republic toys. So, thank you very much for watching, and BionicleSaurus signing out.